I just want to tell you up front, there is no answer I can give today in this session, nor an answer you can give when you talk to your friends or family members about this issue that is going to fully satisfy anyone. There's no answer you can give that will make people go, oh, okay, well, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Now I feel okay about it. Now I feel good. We're delving into a messy, hard, painful area that, if I put it on a chart, it's like we're trying to at least get up to neutral here. Now, the good news is, as Christians, I think we have the best answer that gets us at least up to the baseline of saying, okay, this helps, compared to other worldviews. And in fact, even before I get into the specifics of your notes, let me delve into kind of a broader philosophical discussion just for a minute on this. And some of you will really like this, and the others, maybe not. But in Christianity, we have what is called the problem of evil, and I've just described it. And a lot of people say, that's why I can't be a Christian, because, God can't be good and great and still allow evil. My question to them is, what is your alternative? I mean, before you reject this answer, no one's neutral on this. Somehow you end up on some worldview, some epistemology, some way that you look at this problem of evil and you try to reconcile it. And I think it's helpful for us as we, before we delve into the nuts and bolts of how we try to answer the problem of evil within the Christian worldview, I think it's helpful to realize in my understanding, there are basically only two other major worldview ways of looking at the problem of evil. The first one is atheism. And what atheism does is it obviously denies that God exists. Therefore, if God does not exist, there is no ultimate good or evil at all. Now, a lot of atheists will say, well, sure, you just know what's good and bad. Well, that may be true, but that's an argument for our side. The Bible talks about the conscience God has placed in every human being. We are created in the image of a moral God. He gives us a moral sensibility. But our point is that within atheism, there's no objective grounding for saying what's right and wrong, and ultimately they can't make a strong argument. And in the book, I actually have quotes from atheists who admit this. One of them says, what is our ultimate grounding for objective moral values? And he says, let's just admit it, we don't have one. And this is from an atheist. And so what's the practical implication of this? The practical implication is, ultimately, if you try to live an atheistic worldview, you can't say that something is inherently evil. You can't say that anything is wrong. So when you talk about suffering and pain in the world, you have to say, logically, the outflow of my worldview is, so what? It doesn't matter. We're all a cosmic accident anyway. We evolved by chance, time plus chance plus matter, kind of crashing things together. Here we are. We're going to die. Ultimately, the universe is going to burn out. And whatever we do to each other, whatever happens to us, is just all an incidental, byproduct of chance anyway. There is no right and wrong. And when it comes to things like murder, rape, torturing people, and so on, that may not be your cup of tea, but you can't say it's wrong for me. Now, I hope that whole thing I just said makes you sick. Something inside of you, if you're human, says, that stinks. Of course we matter. Of course, what happens to people can be right or wrong. Of course, murder, rape, torture, these kinds of things are morally wrong. So, why are you saying this? Well, I'm just saying the logical outflow of atheism denies all that. Ultimately, all you have is preferences. You have no right and wrong, no good and evil. You just have preferences. And if your heart tells you that's wrong, welcome back to the world of theism and Christianity. So ultimately, while Christianity has a problem of evil, atheism has a denial of evil. And I'm telling you, the consistent atheists, when you read their writings, they will say exactly what I'm saying. They ultimately say, you can't say it's really wrong, it's really bad. And there are the people that would say what Hitler did was Hitler's preference. Yeah, he killed 6 million Jews and, ultimately was responsible for 11 million deaths around the world. But you know what? We're just atoms bouncing around the universe, and they just try to justify it or say, I wish he hadn't done it. It's not my preference. I wouldn't have joined him in it. But I can't ultimately say it's wrong. By the way, kind of an interesting side note, C.S. Lewis, who we all know now, Chronicles of Narnia, we know his apologetics works, one of the great apologists of the last century, if not the great apologist of the last century, was an atheist, and originally was an atheist because of the problem of evil. He said, I can't believe in God. Look at all the evil things, the very problem I've already stated, until he thought more about it. And he began to realize, wait a minute, if there is no God, there is no evil. And the fact that I know there's evil tells me that there's something good. He said, if all lines were crooked, how would you know what a straight line was? And ultimately, it was the problem of evil that led him back to saying, the very fact that I know in my heart that there are certain things that are morally wrong is evidence that there is a moral lawgiver, that there is a standard, an ultimate standard in the universe that atheism can't account for. And it drove him back to not just theism, a belief in God, but to Christianity. And he ended up becoming one of the great apologists in the Christian faith. So, the atheistic alternative to the problem of evil is a denial of evil, and it does not add up to human experience or the evidence. One other worldview, for those that like these kinds of discussions, is the pantheistic view, the Eastern view that says everything is God. See, the three main views are the theistic view that we hold as Christians, that there's a God who's separate. We have the problem of evil. Then there's the atheistic view that says there is no God. They have the denial of evil. The third is the pantheistic Eastern view that says everything is God, all is part of God. And the problem with that view, if you really try to live that, is ultimately evil is part of God. So they don't have a problem of evil or a denial of evil. They have a deification of evil. Ultimately, everything good and bad is part of God, and you get this kind of Eastern worldview in Star Wars, where the Force is both the dark side and the light side of the Force. There's good and bad within the Force. You get it in various movies and literature, where ultimately all is part of God. Try living that one. You try making sense of that the God, whatever he is the actual cause of evil, and it's inherent. The God you say you want to try to worship is himself both good and evil. Well, now you've deified evil. I tell you what, when I look at those alternatives of atheism and pantheism, I quickly run back to Christian theism and say, I'd rather grapple with the problem of evil, because I think we have the best answer. And I think it's an answer that squares with what we know to be true, sort of in an innate sense, in the sense of what squares with our conscience, with the world we see around us, and so on.